in some of the blanks with that, right? So, Brian, you and I've talked about this too, right? That if we believe that happiness, at the end of the day, isn't that what we're all striving for?
Sure.
Right? I mean, that's it, right? That's what we're trying to, just strip back all the junk, all this junk, right? And all the external stuff that we get, like the awards, we get the award, we think it's going to give us happiness, and that happiness is there, and then it's fleeting, right? But it's the happiness, that's the emotion we're going after, right? So then if we look at that sustainable happiness, what Sean Acor would say, he proposes that, and the happiness effect, he proposes that maybe if you go after happiness, that's all, you're always going to be in those fleeting situations that I just kind of described. But if you go after fulfillment, the byproduct there is happiness, right? And he talks about, to get to fulfillment is that, and this is to be the line that Linda, I'd write down, and Brian, I'd put the record on right now, or write down if you got something there, is that fulfillment comes from measured progress towards a worthy goal. Measured progress towards a worthy goal. Measured progress towards a worthy goal. Right. So like, I'm just going to pause there for a second. I'm going to say, hey, look, are you guys human? Because I am. Right.
Last time I checked.
Last time you checked. Right. So do you guys ever get into a funk? Are you ever like not Pollyannic?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not the only one that I can have a downtime, down day, that sort of thing. Right. Do you guys have that too? Or am I just weird?
No, absolutely.
So when that shows up, now I can go back to this and I can say, all right, measure progress towards a worthy goal. What am I'm missing something here. I'm missing something in this equation. Right? You ever get there beforehand and you're just like, man, I'm in a funk, right? And sometimes you just want to be there just to spite the world, right? I'm just going to be in this funk, right? Right. But if I want to get into a situation where, hey, I'm going to have my 5-minute funeral and then I'm going to go ahead and move into progress, right? If I'm not in a state of happiness or far from it, then I'm missing something in that equation. Would you guys agree with that? Happiness equals measured progress towards a worthy goal. Right? So now, after having a lot of these conversations and really going deeper into it, I recognize there's 4 areas that we really need to go ahead and kind of interrogate. Okay, the goal that we have, first off, are we clear about a goal? This is our first ingredient. Are we clear about the goal? Do we have a goal? Guys, I didn't even think this was a thing, but there's people that are like anti-goals. I didn't think that was a thing. Like it's a thing though, right?
Yeah, it is.
Right.
Coming as I'm a reformed anti-goal setter.
So, all right, so tell me about that. Tell me about that.
Well, I married a goal setter, right? And so when he had his 5-minute goal, his 5-hour goal, his 5-day, 5-month, 5-year plan, I'd look at him and say, well, I would be so disappointed when I missed the goal that I didn't want to set the goal, right? Because I felt like I failed.
Okay. Yeah. And so, all right. I love this. I love it. I'm so happy that we're talking about this because that's exactly what I see, right? And I get that part of it too, right? And then that programming gets compounded and compounded and compounded. And they're like, man, hey, if the root of my pain is setting a goal, I ain't doing any goals anymore. Right? So then I'm curious then, how did you, I don't know what the right word is, but I don't know, let's just say evolve, graduate. Like that, just what was the change? What was the change that created?
It's funny because now fast forward 112 years later, I am the goal setter. I'm the goal setter, and he is not.
Oh my gosh!
And
riddle me that.
Although I think he is, but it's more mentally and it's internalized more. But I'm definitely, and I will say honestly, my turnaround came probably 3 years ago in 2020, when business things started changing for me. I used to pull numbers out of a hat. How much do you want to make this year? Great. How many transactions do you want to have? I don't know. And I didn't have a plan or a why. And I still struggle with, I always admire people who say they have that big why. I still struggle with it a little bit, but
everybody on the call, raise your hand if you struggle with the big why. Everybody raise your hand. Raise your hand. Okay. All right. Just making sure.
Right. So, but I find myself setting more goals, and with John's help, when I don't meet that goal, as long as I've done what I can to get to that goal, I don't feel like it's a failure. And that's really recent.
Isn't that the artwork of it? Like, it's kind of interesting to me. Like, there's all this philosophy around gold. By the way, Philip, I'm going to bring up to speed. What we're talking about here is the happiness, the four ingredients for happiness, right? So if happiness, it comes from fulfillment is, I'm going to say this 1,000 times, so it's ad nauseum.
Please do.
Right? So fulfillment comes from measured progress towards a worthy goal. Fulfillment comes from measured progress towards a worthy goal, right? So in order to really kind of look at that, I was kind of sharing when I'm in a funk. Now, understanding that, now I go to that equation and I'm saying, all right, what am I missing? What's off? Where's there a misalignment? What don't I have clarity around? Right. And so I'm going to rip through the four so we can come back to this in a little bit deeper and really sink into the goal area. The four, because if we don't, we're just not going to talk about the other three. So the first one is having a worthy goal. Now, this is my definition. I don't know. I mean, I'm very open to discussion around this because I'm not sure that there's any empirical one way yes or no. But to me, a worthy goal is something that has meaning to you. Right. So if we're not going to debate that today, maybe we can just kind of agree to hang with that, right? But be open to other definition of it, right? At least I'm open to other definitions. But to me, worthy goal means it's got some sort of meaning. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because here we are in the fourth week, right? And then we've everybody that's on this call has outperformed the market. By the way, can we have, Linda and I, we had a chance to have a conversation about this. Brian, I don't know if I had this information when we were on the call. Philip, we haven't had a conversation on this yet. There was one listing taken for every 7.9 agents in the National Association of Realtors over the last 3 weeks. So Linda, to bring perspective, you've taken 5 listings over the course of the last 3 weeks, right? Ish, right?
Mm-hmm. Ish.
That's the equivalent of the production of 40 agents. Can't take a compliment. Still working on that. Right?
I wrote down 36, but okay.
Well, but isn't that right though? Or wait a minute, am I off on that? What's 5 times 7.9? Okay, all right. So you're all right. I got it. You're taking. All right. That's the team leader in me, overly optimistic. Okay. So there it is, right? So we're performing at a high level, right? And so it was a great goal, right? But what's the meaning? Well, for us, we manufacture this goal. Let's be very clear. Most of us manufacture this goal. Some of us actually took the next step and put meaning towards it, right? The meaning that I was hoping that we would apply to it, at least for in the short run, was we're just using that as a place marker. Right. That's just a place marker. So we can start changing our thought process so we can change our identity.
Okay.
Right. So to me, that's the cool piece there. But at some point, we're going to have to attach that to something that has a deep underlying motive. Right. I'm going to pause there on that conversation, go to the other 3 and come back. Is that cool with you guys? So now the second one is activity. Right. So if I have measured progress towards a goal, then I mean, something's got to happen. There's going to be some sort of action. Right. So I've got to do something. It doesn't even mean that I have to do something that's going to support the goal. Right. I just have to have some activity that I can measure. I'd make an argument that even if I'm going the opposite direction and I'm measuring it, that's progress. That's awareness. Right. So the first one is the worthy goal. Second one is activity. Third one is measurement. Dadgum, there it is again. I need to measure the activities. Right, that's probably one of the biggest things people reject in our industry, and it's probably culturally, right? That's a heavy dose of putting the mirror up, right? I've got to go ahead and log in. Here's my activities that I did today. Did I actually do my job today, or did I do the realtoring stuff? Right? Am I clear about what my job is, right? So then I got to measure the activities. And then the fourth one, and this is probably the one that I see that high achievers have some of all of these are not, I'd say the second one, action, that's the one that comes with some level of natural ability with high achievers. First one, challenge. Most are challenged with that. Second one, they kind of get. Third one, they'll fight it tooth and nail. And then once somebody beats them over the head, they'll do it. And then once they have the luxury of experiencing the measurement and seeing the data around it so they can make better decisions, then they love it. Then they fall in love with it. The fourth one here of reflecting and celebrating, perpetual challenge.
Right.
Right. But if you think about it, happiness comes from fulfillment. Fulfillment is measured progress towards a worthy goal. We talked about the activity. We talked about the measurement. If we're not reflecting on that measurement, then what's the good? What's the purpose? So those are the four ingredients as I see it. Am I missing anything here? And by the way, just this is my observation. Like, this is not like out of a book or anything, like empirical stuff or anything like that. So this is just observations I'm making here. So I'm sincerely asking you guys, am I missing anything in those areas?
I don't think so.
No, that sounds good. I was wondering what the fourth would be, the reflection. That is harder than you would think.
Isn't it?
You challenged me to do that last week, and it made me realize how little time I actually take to reflect. Which your perception is your reality, right? I mean, I can coach to that all day long to my team, but what's my perception? And I'm keeping my perception correct in what I'm actually doing.
Guys, I think you're, at this point, I'm kind of preaching the choir with this stuff, but I mean, the reason to do that, right? Preach the choir so the choir sings, right? Well, you guys all have teams. You guys all have leaders. You've got clients, you got affiliates, all those sorts of things, right? And so, there's a couple of things resistance points that I'm seeing when it comes to thought. The first one is that one can't learn what one already believes they know. So when you talk about things as basic, I mean, thought, and to most people, that's as basic as, can you walk? Right? Can I walk? Yeah, I can walk. Why are we talking about walking right now? Right? But so first off, I'm rejecting the notion that I'm not doing it or doing it with a level of intention, right? Which would be the second area of resistance, right? So is there different levels of thought? Like, what is that? Right. So the first one is just being open-minded to have a conversation around it. Right. The second one that I find is that if I'm going to go ahead and dedicate myself to thought, what questions am I going to ask? And then the third one is that if I'm going to be in my mind by myself, that can be a scary place to be, can't it? So people reject that. So those are the resistance points that I'm seeing early on in this journey here. But thought I'd share that. But so the worthy goal piece, let's go back to that, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and make it to where, here's my concern. When we go into the worthy goal, the first thing that comes up, because we're programmed in our organization to say big why, right? And I'm going to first off say those who have a heightened level of clarity around the big why, that they tend to perform at a heightened level, right? And I believe that big why, that clarity comes from the activity towards that worthy goal. Well, now I put myself in this weird paradox, right? So you're telling me now, Donna, that I've got to have a worthy goal that you said had its meaning, and that meaning could be the big why, but I won't know the big why until I move towards that meaning. What? Think of it this way, right? Has anybody ever done a rehab? Or any sort of construction project on their home, anything that's over $5,000 or $10,000, right?
Yes.
So did you have a conceptual construction budget?
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about right now. We're going to put together a conceptual construction budget.
Okay.
Then after that, what did you do? Then you went out and you got bids, right? You started sharpening your pencil. Then the budget came to life, right? Now the budget just didn't have all zeros at the end of like penny, like down to the penny, down to the dollar, kind of, right? So let's get the conceptual construction budget. And so the conceptual construction budget to me is every big why that I've come across so far comes underneath the umbrella, and you guys have heard me say this, of living life on my own terms. Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
So to me, that means that, I want to go ahead and do what I want to do, when I want to do it, with whomever I want to do it. Right. And that would mean specifically that I want to be able to do whatever I want to do tomorrow without having to take a listing today. Right. If I'm not in that position, then that means that I need some sort of financial resources. Are we in agreement here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now we can start bringing some some meat and potatoes to this. And I would tell Phil's got his thumbs up. I love that, man. So, which by the way, guys, like this is an area here that thanks to your guys' persistence around this subject matter, it's caused me to go deeper and deeper into it because I'm recognizing that most people, they like right now, wealth building is a really popular conversation in our organization, right? And so we're getting all fed with all this great information about, okay, how do we get, build our wealth? What do we do with it? All that sort of stuff. But intertwining the conversation of how does my business intertwine with wealth? That's still a really confusing area here. And I'm hoping that after today, we bring a little bit more clarity to that. Because what I'm finding is that most people, we go out and we buy good investments, not really having clarity as to why we're buying the investment, right? But just, is it good, right? Think of this, right? When an investor comes to you and says, guys, I want a really good investment, right? And then you ask, okay, well, what does that look like? And they say, it's just got to be good. Hey, when you see it looks good, that's what I want, right? That's one conversation. Then you have another investor comes in and says, hey, I'm looking for 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes in this school district. That's a brick bungalow or whatever. And it can achieve this type of rent. Now I can start working with that a little bit, right? So now we're going to be in this position where we're going to try to triangulate what that worthy goal can look like for us. And the reason I'm using the word triangulate is because you guys are in a very unique position, right? You're kind of some of the strengths of our role is what kind of confuses us in this conversation, right? And what I mean by this is you guys have influence over some of the key determining factors of what we need to be thinking about when it comes to our wealth building, right? So to be clear, that worthy goal that we're trying to gain more clarity of is what is the investable resources? What's the cash I need, right, to buy the investments I want to buy that are going to give me the cash flow that I desire? That's the whole project for today. So I'm going to pause for a second there. Thoughts, questions, concerns, excitements? So I'm looking to go ahead and identify how much cash do I need to go ahead and create the cash flow down the road for me, right? So now with this, there's 3 things that I need to be really dialing in on. First one that I need to spend time with is what's my desired monthly cash flow? Something like that might actually make sense, huh? Which, by the way, I'll send this out to you guys, or I'll throw it on the Facebook page. So the desired monthly cash flow, right? So for the sake of our conversation, I'm just going to put $10,000. Right now, I'll say here that this, if Mark King was a part of the conversation, he'd say that there might be 3 different phases, and I'd say there might even be more, right? So phase 1 would be offsetting my current personal expenses. Phase 2 might be to double that. Phase 3 would be to 10x it, right? Now, the reason I think that there might be multiple phases, like phase 1A, then phase 1B, could be how we define passive or leveraged. Okay. And so I'll give you an example. And the example's already written in here, right? So there's a client that we work with, and she's got a short-term rental. So I would consider that leverage, not passive. Are you guys in agreement? Okay. So she's saying, I'm going to do 1A. Then as I build this portfolio, then I'm going to start working on 1B, right? Which with right now, she's thinking it'll be long-term rentals, right? Right. Which would be a little less noisy. I'd still call leverage, but a little less noisy, right? Which, by the way, I want to take a step back, right? So first one, I got to figure out what's my monthly cash flow that I desire, right? Then the second one I got to figure out is in what time frame do I want to get there? Basically, what we're building out here is let's call it a spade. It's a form of a succession plan, right? So then I got to figure out by what time do I want to get there, right? And give yourself some perspective here. It takes people on average 2 years to get through the first 3 steps of Dave Ramsey's 7-step. 2 years to get through $1,000 in reserves, completing the debt snowball, getting rid of all of the unsecured debt, And then the third one of having 3 to 6 months reserves. That takes people on average 2 years. You guys have the luxury of being able to do that in 2 to 3 months if we focus on listings. Shameless plug. So here we go, right? Then the third one here is that we got to figure out what is the vehicle, right? So those are really the three major things we got to focus on, right? So I'm just going to walk you through this client. So she said, we're just going to use $10,000 as she kind of looked at her monthly budget. Then she said, originally she said, hey, I want to do this in 5 years. So she actually had a 5 here. By the way, we didn't have this formula together. Like we just were like whiteboarding it out for like 3 days, right? And then she said, well, here's the basis that I've got, the benchmark. I've got this condo down in Florida, right? And I want to say Bradenton, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And so she's got this condo here, and it's at 500 grand. And she said, at the end of the day, I'm going to put down 20%, and it was 100 grand. Now, in this situation here, what am I doing here? Cash. Because I did a little bit different here on each one. Okay. So basically what ends up happening here is that on this deal, what she found is that after all of her expenses on this property, right, she was netting $1,600 a month. Does that make sense, guys? So by the way, when you see this, guys, like on the tabs, what I'm doing down here, cash on cash, I'm going to call this the anchor. Okay, because sometimes you're going to look at something and say, all right, hey, once you get a little bit more awareness of something, you're going to say, all right, hey, I'm looking for a cash on cash return of 20%. That's her non-negotiable. She doesn't necessarily care what the investment is, but it's got to be a 20% cash on cash, right? Now, I would say, which by the way, that's if you're looking at the tax-free wealth, right? Tom Wheelwright talks about a professional investor as somebody who makes one decision, right, going through this ad nauseum, and then repeats, right? Whereas an amateur investor, right, they make multiple decisions, right? We're just going to make one decision and repeat, right? And so she's made this decision. I'm going to 20% cash on cash. In order for me to go ahead and consider it, that's my game, right? Now, because of that, right, I'm a proponent of investing in what you know. We're all in the real estate world, so it makes sense for us to invest in real estate. So, but because she's focused on 20% cash on cash, that's her non-negotiable. She can't find that with short-term or long-term rentals. I can't even find, well, I guess I shouldn't say that. I could find it in my market, but if you bought 5 properties, I probably have to set the expectation you're going to literally burn one of them down within the next 10 years. Right? Or you're hiring, and this is true, honestly, or you're hiring an off-duty police officer to pick up rent, one of the two, right? So there's other components to it too, right? Like quality of life, like do I value my life, kind of a thing, right? So for her, 20%. Here she is, a $500,000 property. She said, I can probably find that with some routine. She's basing it on, is this a home run? And she said, a home run was probably if I get it for 400, right? But a double would be 500. Okay, cool. So we can find that with some regularity. So that means that she needs 100 grand to put down to get $1,600 a month. Yeah, we all tracking?
Yep.
Right. So now over here, then everything's in yellow. You guys have a chance to go ahead and change, right? Everything else kind of formulates for you. So then what that tells us here is that we've got to buy 6 of these vehicles if we're going to do this vehicle, right? Remember, we're still, this is just conceptual construction cost, right? That's the name of the game. We just want context, right? So if I bought 6 of these at 500,000, that's going to cost me what? 3 million, right? Now, the overcomplicated side of us might say, well, if it's over 3 years, it might appreciate, then maybe it's 3.2, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I got it, right? Got it. And we could have like we'll get AI on it at some point. Right now, this is what we got, right? So then that would mean here, if I want to put 20% down on this $3 million, what does that mean? I have to have investable assets. 600 grand, right? So if I'm going to do that in 3 years, then that means I've got to have 200 grand per year. Right? Now, the reason she came up with 10 grand is that this was her monthly expenses. So that's 10 grand is her monthly expenses. So now in order to go ahead and have be able to make this investment, get to where she wants to go in 3 years. She's going to add, and by the way, I also know that this is basic because I'm not adding in taxes and stuff like that. However, if we're using cost segregation bonus depreciation, we got a really good chance of eliminating a significant portion of those taxes. I digress, right? But if I take the 200 grand here of investable assets and then 10,000 times 12, it's 120 grand. So it's 320 grand she needs net from her business, right? Now, her net commission income per transaction is $7,500, right? And there's depending on where we're at as far as our awareness of what that looks like. If we're using P&Ls, we can get really clear about that. If not, then we're going to go ahead and just make sure we've got a general idea without going through a forensic audit. The point being here is that how many units does she have to transact each year to achieve her goal within 3 years?
43.
Does that now have meaning?
Mm-hmm.
So if she move forward on this journey, do you think she'd start bringing more clarity to, is it 10,000 or is it 11,000? Right? Or she could just sit here and pontificate for the next 4 months. What's my budget? Oh, I don't have a budget. I should get a budget. I got all this. But maybe now she's inspired to do the budget. What's going through your mind?
John, I think I have all of these numbers except for what my standard is for a cash on cash return. So
The other angle you can go at here is net operating income.
Okay.
Right. So like a lot of times, you'll see this a lot with long-term rentals, right? Where they'll say, well, I want to make sure that I get $200 a month rent. Like this is a Gene Rivers. Gene Rivers would say, I want to make sure that I get at least, she'd say 200 to 300. So let's just say 250. But I also know he's not buying them for 500,000. He's buying them for close to 200,000, maybe even less. So now in order for him to get there with that, he's got to do 87 transactions. If everything else is the same. But you guys see it, like, think how many variables there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 variables that are unique to every single person and every single circumstance. Right? It's because we look at it and we see these variables and we don't even line them up. And they're like, man, I don't know, forget it. And then it doesn't mean anything.
Yep.
At least this is what I found to be true for me. Thoughts, questions, concerns, excitements? What do you guys think? Let's think here about why we're having this conversation. We're having a conversation about finishing strong. We're having a finish about digging deep, right? We're having a conversation about doing things that we might not believe we can even do. Linda, I think, would you agree we had a conversation about that?
Yeah.
Right. And so there's a lot of cost. There's a lot of pain that would be incurred with that. I promise you, we will be unwilling to pay the price if we don't know what we are buying. And I'd still make an argument here. Hey, this is just the vehicle, right? I still don't know necessarily what I'm buying, but I'm starting to gain more clarity of the picture. Is that fair?
Yep.
How's this help, guys? Or does it not?
No, it's huge. I love the simplicity of it. You're exactly right, John. We talk a lot about wealth building. I've been to the classes. We talk about the numbers and how to break down a good investment, right? But that good being, kind of an ethereal standard. And so I like the connection to actual production.
Yeah, guys. I mean, like, here's the thing. Like everybody that's on the call right now has had an exceptional month, right? For themselves and relatively speaking for within the industry, right? And what's natural? I mean, your greatest threat, Linda, we talked about this. What's the greatest threat?
Me?
Any of us at this point. Starts with the C. Complacency.
Oh yeah. Sorry. I was going to say distractions, but yes.
Well, here's the thing. The distractions will show up because we're complacent.
Yep.
Right? So if we really want to go ahead and maintain this momentum, we're going to have to put some fuel in the tank. Right? This month we're running on pure optimism and opportunity, right? We're running on, let's see what we can do. Right? And by the way, that was a heck of a job. We're not even done yet, right? I mean, we're looking really solid, right? But we need the reinforcements. Because if we're going to maintain this, we got to get our reinforcements. So what if we spend a little bit of time with this over the weekend? Take us home, guys. What's one aha?
So you talked about the fourth thing that people struggle with, or the four parts of the whole conversation. The fourth one being reflection. I think you gave me my reflection task for this week.
Well, that's a cool. Honestly, I didn't put that together. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I mean, if I don't know all of those numbers, then my first step is figuring out what all those variables are, right? So I can get really clear on what's my own personal pursuit of happiness, right?
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Guys, I appreciate you guys so much. So I'm posting it right now in the Facebook group. As you guys are tinkering with it, I'd love to hear about your journey. Right, Linda, you were asking, hey, where's everybody at? It's conversations. You guys have a greater ability to impact them, the folks that aren't on the call, than I do, by just sharing your experience. If this is a value to it, share it. I guarantee it'll inspire people if it's a value to you guys. Cool.
Yep.
Appreciate you guys.
Thanks.
Take care. See you next week.